Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today is Thursday. That means we are going to talk Turner syndrome. So, I have kind of another heavy topic today, like I did on Monday, but I think it's a really important one, and I think it is probably the biggest concern most parents or most people have with Turner syndrome, and probably the most complicated thing to understand. I want to talk about life expectancy with Turner syndrome. There are a few different facets to it, but it boils down to, in my mind, two main things to think about. And that is making it to term in a pregnancy and physically being healthy after birth. So the 2 points that you really have to think about, and this really comes into play, are the baby being able to develop in the womb and developing correctly, and then everything still being okay after they're born. No complications arising afterwards. Now, in my story, the only point in my life that I was ever in danger was while my mom was still pregnant with me. The biggest concern, the most life-threatening concern for me at that point was the fluid retention. And I can never remember the medical term for it, but it's something hygroma. Basically is just the fancy medical term for there was fluid in my chest cavity and in the back of my neck. And I know that's pretty common. I don't know how common it is and how severe it usually is. I know the doctors told my mom that they had never seen a case of that so severe just reverse itself. The reason they were concerned was because of the fluid in my chest cavity not allowing my lungs and my heart to develop properly, so they thought my lungs would not develop enough for me to even be able to breathe. And so if I didn't miscarry before my mom had me, after I was born, I would try to breathe and not be able to because my lungs would not be developed enough. That and my heart not growing properly, all of those vital internal organs not being able to develop because of the fluid surrounding them. So that was their concern, and because of that, they actually gave me a less than 1% chance of even living. Like, point something percent chance of living, let alone what my odds would be if I did make it to term. None of what they predicted came true at all. They said that I would either miscarry, or if I did make it to a live birth, I would try to breathe and not be able to and pass away that way. And then if that didn't happen, their guess was basically I would be a vegetable. They said I wouldn't be able to talk, eat, walk, nothing. I would have no quality of life and in no uncertain terms would be a vegetable. That was the picture they gave my parents, all based around the fluid because of where the fluid was. And at first they weren't even sure what the fluid was. They thought initially that I had spina bifida because of all of the fluid, and the fluid being also in the back of my neck. And then they figured out it wasn't. My mom went to a brain specialist and he goes, "No, she's fine." And they did an amniocentesis, and that's when I was diagnosed with Turner syndrome. And that was still while the fluid was there, and it was very scary. And then after the fluid had receded and my lymphatic system started working, and all the fluid got dispersed to where it actually should have been, and I was fine. But they watched my development very, 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 very closely. I had like 4D ultrasounds to find every internal organ I had, and all of it came back fine. They never found anything off at all. And they were checking everything. They literally took the time to find every single organ, and I was fine. So that's the biggest concern in pregnancy, as far as my knowledge goes, is the fluid retention. Either that or just the baby just not developing well. Not being able to develop well. And that's scary. Then if you do make it to a live birth, the biggest concern for a living woman with Turner syndrome is heart problems. I know I have said this time and time again, but it really is the only answer to the question of, is Turner syndrome fatal? Before I explain this, I do want to say Turner syndrome is in no way a death sentence. At all. Not even close. It wasn't while my mom was pregnant with me, and it's not now. I know I am very, very blessed, and I have had no health complications pretty much whatsoever, and that's not always the case. But every case is different. So until you know what your specific case is going to look like, you can't know where your medical progression is going and taking you and what your health is going to look like. And after the fluid receded and I was okay, I don't know if it was written before or after I was born, but me and my mom had medical journals written about us because the doctors were so shocked and surprised and taken aback at how much it had reversed itself and how quickly. And it just, the whole thing totally shifted their thinking. They had been pushing termination up to that point very, very hardly. In fact, they were still telling my mom after that, if you continue, we cannot guarantee you won't have to deliver her dead. My mom even got a comment once that they were surprised that they even found a heartbeat that day. Whether you're a mom or not, I think you can imagine how very unhelpful and hard that was. But that being said, there are serious concerns for heart issues, and from my understanding, that is the biggest health complication that's actually life-threatening. Everything else kind of just is a health complication. It's not life-threatening though. The heart problem is what really decides for your specific case if Turner syndrome is life-threatening for you, or if Turner syndrome is going to manifest itself in a way that is life-threatening. So the heart problem is the biggest concern, but it's also something pretty volatile. I had always thought that if they had never found any heart problems for me, I didn't have them. And I didn't think I had any potential of getting them if I hadn't already developed it. Like, I thought I would have been born with it if I was going to get it. Upon trying to go through IVF, I found out that was not the case, that you can actually have it brought on by something if your heart is put under enough duress. That just nails home the importance of watching the heart issues and making yourself aware of what your heart looks like right now and keeping that monitoring up. I've now had 2 cardiac MRIs in my life and more echoes on my heart than I could even count on my hands. I've had a lot of monitoring. My heart has always been great. Knock on wood. My heart has been amazing. I've never had any heart problems at all. But they really stressed upon me with going through IVF that could bring it on, even if you had never had any history of it before. They just would not even be willing to take me through IVF if I was already starting with it. And there was no guarantee that pregnancy would bring it on for me, but they didn't want to start with issues and have that just exacerbate it. So they wanted to make sure my heart was in a position to handle it to begin with. And it is. I was cleared for IVF, but once again, that's not always the case. And the heart issue is what I end up hearing about being the thing that girls with Turner syndrome that pass away from, is the scary, scary heart problems. And I think if I learned anything from the last 5 or 6 months of being more conscious about my health and what my body is doing, that has been the biggest thing I've learned, is not to take for granted my health and what my health looks like right now, and to not assume that that will always be the case and that things won't arise or can't arise. So to answer the question of life expectancy, there's those 2 folds to it. If you're pregnant with a girl with Turner syndrome, what does in utero look like? Does she have those complications already? How severe is the fluid retention if it's there? Is that case life-threatening? Is it a risk to miscarry? Is it a risk to not even make it to a live birth? And that's what they were telling my parents. They did not expect me to live to term, and they really didn't ever expect me to live to 26 years old if I did make it to a live birth. And my mom was a very, very, very high-risk pregnancy. Not because she was high-risk in any way, but because I was high-risk. There's that. And then there's afterwards, how okay are you? How is Turner syndrome affecting you? Is your heart strong? Are your lungs strong? Is your thyroid working properly? Are your kidneys shaped properly? Because you can actually have misshaped kidneys also. There's all of these things that the most life-threatening thing is the heart problem. And it's called aortic dissection. Aortic dissection is where the aortic valve starts expanding. And that gets very, very dangerous the worse it becomes. Watching for that, that's why I've had echoes my whole life. That's why they did 2 cardiac MRIs on me. The first one wasn't for IVF. Even though I had another one, they wanted a more recent one, and it showed the same thing. But that's why those are important. And that really is the only way to answer the life expectancy question of, is this life-threatening in any way? Are there the heart problems? What does that specific case look like? To ask if Turner syndrome is life-threatening, you really have to look at each case separately. And these are very serious issues. These are very real concerns that need to be addressed. But I also really wanted to hone in on the point that every case is different. So you can't watch a YouTube video and know if your case is life-threatening or not, because it's all about your specific case. And that has been another huge lesson I've learned since diving more into the world of Turner syndrome, is how different each case is. And I know I probably sound like a broken record with how many times I've said that, but I cannot stress enough how true that really is. And to compare to other cases is just cutting short what your specific case and your specific story is. With that being said, I also wanted to drive home the point that Turner syndrome does not in any way mean it's a death sentence. It does not have to be. It's not guaranteed just from the diagnosis of Turner syndrome that it's a death sentence. There are serious health concerns and serious health complications. Absolutely. But just the fact that you were diagnosed with Turner syndrome does not give you a death sentence or anywhere near it. So I hope you can kind of be able to take that and really, really use that as encouragement to look into your own case. I hope this video helped you in some way. I hope it was encouraging. If you liked this video and it helped you in some way, give it a thumbs up and share it with everybody. Spread the word, get the conversation going. And if you were not already subscribed to my channel, click the screen and subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye!